First thought that comes to my mind is a false flag operation. And I don't mean in that sense that the Russians were trying to do it. What I mean in that sense is that one of the European intelligence bodies, even MSAD for example, might have tried to do it and then make it look like Zelensky did it and heat up the war a little bit. I don't know how they expect to heat it up by killing Putin. I imagine they'd heat it up in the sense that the Russians would go full bore until they were at the Polish border and then just wipe the rest of Ukraine off the map. I don't know. But it's silly to me to have these sorts of things. Well, silly. It's not productive certainly for the leadership to be doing it on any of the sides, Europe side, NATO in general, Washington, Russia, Ukraine. When Wilkerson mentions a false flag, he's not speculating for shock value. He's pointing to a historical pattern. Intelligence services have often used provocation to force escalation when momentum is fading. But here's the irony. Assassinating a leader like Putin wouldn't weaken Russia. It would unify it. The result wouldn't be restraint. It would be total war. That's why this kind of thinking isn't just reckless. It's strategically stupid. Escalation for the sake of narrative control has a habit of spiraling beyond anyone's control. So who's doing it? Who, for example, is flying these drones over Russian tankers in the Baltic? Who is threatening to do this or that in Crimea? Is it really the warring parties, i.e. Ukraine, NATO, Washington, Russia, or is it other people playing in it? Because we've got that going on today. We've got that going on in Iran. We've got that going on as in the Caucasus in general, but we've got it going on all over the place. And the other day, I heard about some shenanigans going on in the Philippines. And the assertion was that the Chinese were behind them. The Chinese aren't behind that. Well, what good would it serve the Chinese to go fly some drones in the Philippines or whatever? So, we got a lot of people out there doing things that are not necessarily in the interest of any of the so-called warring parties, to include Gaza. Now, I don't know how to interpret it other than that we've got some extraneous actors out there who are trying to do things either for their own benefit or because they don't feel the war is going particularly in their direction and they want to get it going in their direction, or they want to stoke it or whatever. Wilkerson's point is simple but dangerous. Not every provocation comes from the main players. Wars are often steered by shadow actors who benefit from chaos. When incidents are designed to confuse rather than clarify, escalation becomes automatic and control is lost. Well, Zelensky is faced with two very stark choices. He can either accept the truth, which is that Putin has beat Ukraine badly on the battlefield. Wilkerson strips away the noise here. Zelensky isn't facing options. He's facing reality. Once battlefield facts settle, politics follows. Denial only prolongs damage and take it from there. Which probably means the end of his leadership, because I think one of Putin's also "I will not surrender" items is Zelensky has to go. There has to be a constitutionally elected leader of Ukraine. So that's one approach. You lie, you cheat, you steal, you do whatever you can to try and keep what is left of your support on your side and keep the battle going on. That way maybe you survive for a little bit longer anyway. And the other choice is he admits the truth. But let's just examine that for a moment. If he admits the truth, then he's got to at least concretely, he's saying, if not admitting, I've been lying to you up to this point because it can't be that I give you the truth now and it came to me in a sudden blinding flash of realization because you've known that incrementally over the last year or better. Now you're telling us, suddenly. So neither choice is very good for him. Were I he and faced with the circumstances that I'm fairly confident he's faced with now, I'd opt for the tell the truth bit and go from there and see what happens. But he's not going to do that. He's not that character. He's not that kind of person. He's the kind of person that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin and all the rest of the guys involved in this proxy war, in this conflict, are you the day of having in front of them, because in Trump's case Zelensky is a better liar than Trump, and in Putin's case has no leg to stand on, so he's just nothing but a lie. And mobilization, I'm sorry. There have been mobilization measures taken before now. He's not just contracting soldiers. That's a part of it, but there is a part of it that's mobilization too, which is why his defense industrial base has been energized, because it's part of Russia's mobilization just like it is most any country. Meanwhile, while we're talking about this, while Aaron intelligence entities are putting out things like the Chinese did this in the Philippines, or the Chinese did this in the South China Sea, all of which is false. What I've been hearing anyway about their messing around in the area. What is not false is that China is looking at Taiwan with a very, very jaundiced eye right now, and we are not paying any attention to this, and we're going to be surprised when suddenly one morning we wake up and China is in Taiwan. And while Washington stays fixated on Ukraine, Wilkerson warns the real strategic surprise may be forming elsewhere in the Pacific, where China is watching Taiwan far more closely than most are willing to admit. Not in military force. They will have engineered a deal with the leadership in Taipei because the leadership in Taipei watches us too, just as the rest of the world is watching us. And when they see things that don't give them great confidence in the empire's ability to fulfill its promises to them, let alone to come to their defense, they worry. And that's when you suddenly get developments that weren't counted on Monday. You get them on Tuesday within the moment that it happens. And we're not paying any attention to these sorts of things. Trump is paying absolutely, the Pentagon, as far as I can tell, is paying absolutely no attention to what is really going on in the South China Sea right now. Partly because look at where our assets are. How would you combine your assets if you had to suddenly deal with the eastern end of the Mediterranean? Trump has now said he's going to do Iran again. He said to Netanyahu he's going to do Iran again. Netanyahu convinced him that Iran is reconstituted, mind you, their nuclear program. It never was taken out. Maybe it was damaged a little bit, but it was refurbished pretty well. And that they're taking on modern missiles and so forth, and at the time it's ripe and we got to do it. And Trump apparently said, yes, I'm with you. I mean, he came out and told the press, yes, I'm with you. We got to hit Iran again. So you can't figure this administration out from Monday through Friday. I don't know what their strategy is. I don't know what their tactics are underneath that strategy. Except I do know now that their dead bodies and flotsam and jetsam floating up on the northern shore of South America from the strikes they've conducted, so many. This administration is an enigma to me. It's a mystery to me. I don't even pretend to know what they're thinking anymore. This is the part many miss. Wilkerson isn't saying China will move with tanks or missiles first. He's saying power shifts when confidence disappears. If leadership in Taipei doubts Washington's ability or willingness to back its promises, negotiations happen quietly and fast. Strategic change rarely announces itself. It shows up suddenly after months of ignored signals. And by the time it's visible, the decision has already been made. If they bring the conflict in Ukraine to some sort of an end, to some sort of settlement agreement, do you think that the military-industrial complex would replace the war in Ukraine with some other conflicts? Absolutely. They're just salivating at the prospect of China. Salivating. They'd much rather have it be China than Russia because they feel like Russia's come to an equivalency to a certain extent. They haven't been tested. Chinese haven't been tested. There are a lot of people that I won't say his name, that 3-star general who keeps pontificating about China. They haven't been tested in the way that Russia's been tested. Russia's industrial base has proven itself. China's hasn't. China's is on paper, if you will, to a certain extent. I don't think it is. Personally, I don't think it's on paper. I think 6,000 boats in their deep water fishing fleet, a navy that's unparalleled. Wilkerson is exposing a structural problem here. For parts of the military-industrial system, peace isn't a conclusion. It's a pause. If one conflict winds down, attention shifts immediately to the next potential theater. China becomes the focus not because war is inevitable, but because it's untested, uncertain, and therefore useful as a justification. That mindset turns strategy into habit and habit into perpetual confrontation. Submarines that are as good as ours, all manner of other things, including hypervelocity missiles that are better than ours. The only thing about China's military that leaves me a question mark in my mind is untested in combat for a long, long time. The last time they had any brouhaha even was with Vietnam in '79, I think it was, and they sort of got themselves, Vietnam had a battle-hardened army. Tell me about it. They sign it, the Chinese got their ass handed to them when they made that incursion into Vietnam. So they haven't really had a chance to get real battlefield experience like, for example, the Russians have, or the UK Ukrainians have, or the IDF now, although the IDF's experience has been in murder, not really in war. And that's true on all fronts: Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza, and the West Bank. It's murder. It's not war. So that's the only thing that would concern me about China were at the top of their military leadership. But other than that, the military-industrial complex would love to replace the Soviet Union of the old Cold War days with China. Love to probably even mention it in board meetings. Yeah. Do you think that Taiwan would be interested in getting involved in the whole? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think one of the reasons we have this deal that may be going on right now where long-range or longer-range missiles are promised to Taipei is that that's a negotiating mechanism for the current government in Taipei. They know that we won't have them to them for years. That's just the way we do things now. Taiwan is still waiting for things we promised them 7 years ago. We just don't have the industrial capacity to produce these things for ourselves and our allies and others at the speeds that we say we do. And Donald Trump's been lying to a lot of these people, or they're just accepting his, misstatements, because you can't get Tomahawk missiles off the production line at the speed Donald Trump mouth runs, let alone some of these other more sophisticated things. You just can't get them off the production line. About the only thing we can get out that is a main battle implement, if you will, is all those tanks we bought out of the Lemon, Ohio plant because the line was going to go dormant. So, Congress bought I think it was another 4,000 M1 Abrams tanks, and they put them up in the mountains somewhere to store them. But how relevant are they even unless you take them to Ukraine and get the tinning put on them and all the other things that you have to, and then train the crews and how to look not for enemy anti-tank weapons but for drones. So we can't make much NEMA, and we can't make it fast even if we can make it. But the military-industrial complex would love to change that. They would love to change that. They would love to build things all across the country and get going again World War II style. How about Venezuela and Iran? How about these two cases? I think we're going to get our rear end handed to us in Iran. I think Israel's going to get its state handed to it in a coffin by Iran. Venezuela is a different matter because I don't think we are stupid enough to put major forces ashore on the South American continent. Here's a proposition for you, Neen. Simón Bolívar was a long time ago. If we want to create a new Simón Bolívar, ask Lula if he'd take the job. Yeah. If we want to create that, just keep doing what we're doing. Just keep doing what we're doing. South America has a lot of people. It has a lot of countries. There's nothing in the world that says the empire can't so antagonize the leadership of the majority of those countries that they pitch together and say no more. No. Ms. Wilkerson draws an important distinction here. China isn't weak. It's untested. And for the military-industrial ecosystem, that uncertainty is tempting. An untested rival can be inflated into a threat, modeled on paper and sold politically. But this also exposes a deeper problem. America's own industrial limits. Promises are made faster than weapons can be produced. When credibility erodes with allies, partners, even deterrence itself, strategy becomes improvisation. And that's when miscalculation becomes most dangerous. No. Moss and we wind up creating a bugaboo in the South that we didn't need to create because of our stupidity. We seem to think that the rest of the world is still as inferior to us as it was throughout most of the Cold War. It isn't. It isn't. Now, there are lots of problems, and some of those problems we've forced on them which make them even hate us worse. Like climate change, for example, where they haven't contributed very much at all to the emissions, and we've contributed majorly to the emissions, and they're paying for it. This is Wilkerson's final warning, and it cuts deeper than geopolitics. The world isn't inferior anymore. It's aware of power, hypocrisy, and consequences. When arrogance replaces understanding, nations don't gain control. They manufacture resistance. Climate, economics, security, all of it is interconnected. Now, ignore that reality and you don't preserve leadership. You accelerate the moment when the rest of the world decides it's had.